I don't know enough from the information that I've had here and even what I've read about this, about an elected mayor and whether that would work here or not. And Councillor Mason has provided some arguments there about where it does work in London and in Manchester. And Manchester seems to be moving ahead at leaps and bounds, even though Manchester, I don't think, at the last count had any Conservative councillors. However, you know, it's embraced this proposal, it's moving ahead, taking control over things such as house funding, and it's going to have an elected mayor as well. So clearly it can work. Councillor Mason used the argument that it's only if you've got a conurbation or you've got, you know, a central point as such. But London's a huge conurbation with effectively many different towns and cities within it. So, you know, that's a huge undertaking, but it's got a single mayor and it can work. So I think in order for a combined authority to really work, it needs a strong executive. It's going to need a strong executive body and possibly it needs a strong mayor as well, because let's face it, in this country, we are not great at changing things. We are not great at getting infrastructure projects off the ground and delivered. So it's going to need someone who's prepared to take that forward. And in that way, they've got to have executive power. Perish the thought if we had a world that was run by Liberal Democrats. I don't think we'd have any houses. I don't know where we'd be living. We'd have no transport to get around. They'd be opposing everything that was coming forward. Any sign of progress, because who it might upset. So, you know, that's something that we've got to try and change in this country. We've got to make sure that we're able to deliver infrastructure projects. And in terms of executive power, people are against executive power when they haven't got it. You know, they're all for executive power. The former leader of the council always wanted a committee system when he was in power, but we never heard him say that, and he never delivered it. He's quite happy with executive power. I have to say, leader of the council currently spoke a lot about the committee system. Last time we discussed it, she voted against it. So people are very anti-executive power, particularly if it involves them losing some, or they no longer hold that executive power. So for me, it's got to be about what works, and for the Labour group, what works for the people of Portsmouth, not what works for politicians here in this city or what works for politicians in the rest of Hampshire. In terms of referendum, we did have that debate on the referendum here. I think I might have articulated during that debate I am not a great fan of referendums. I know they're all the rage at the moment, not just here, but in Greece. We're going to have this big debate about Europe, apparently. I don't know what we're going to debate, because it doesn't look like David Cameron is going to be putting much on the table as such. It's already been predetermined. But we're going to have a referendum. He's got to have that referendum because he's got to try and buy off the right-wingers and the sceptics within the Conservative government. But I think people out there very much are of the view, we've elected you, get on with it. Get on with it and sort it out. This idea that we constantly revert to them in order to make decisions. And on this, I don't know what we'd be sending back to them in terms of Liberal Democrat motion. It doesn't talk about what powers. And my understanding of this whole proposal is it's about extra powers. It's about us getting extra powers, extra control, being able to determine things that are currently determined by central government. So it's not about giving stuff away, it's about receiving extra powers. And if the referendum is just going to be used in order to, you know, to make a political point, to talk about something that we might lose, I just don't see that having much value at all. We fully support the initiative. We support what's there in the paper. We support the council leader and the chief executive in taking forward discussions on this. If we'd had a Labour government, we would have been pursuing a similar approach. It would have been on a fairly laissez-faire approach as well, in that, you know, if you couldn't agree with your neighbouring authorities, fair enough, it's up to you, but you don't get the powers. And I think that's a similar view with the current government. If you want the powers, you're going to have to bang heads together and sort this out. So we can't delay this as such, but I know that the more people you've got involved and the more authorities, the more politicians, the more people that feel they've got something to lose, then the more difficult it's going to be. It's going to be akin to clearly nailing jelly on the wall. So there's going to have to be an adult approach to this. There's going to have to be a lot of compromises as well. And the idea that we can just talk about Portsmouth and we're just going to think about the interests here, and we're not prepared to compromise, well, it ain't going to work. So we're going to have to sit down and be sensible.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. I'll call on Councillor Stubbs, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This whole agenda, it's recognition that regions exist. Regions exist as a matter of geographic fact, whether government chooses to acknowledge that or not, and that there is a tier between an individual local authority and a government, and you just have to look at the way the public government departments themselves are organised. A lot of them are organised into regions rather than just as one monolith. And this is a way of giving at least a measure of democratic accountability over some of those government departments. And I think it's something I very much welcome. You know, there are some aspects which have already been talked about which clearly have a regional implication. Housing numbers being one of them. You can't just really look at this. We have a national planning policy framework which says you have to meet your housing need unless you make a deal with your neighbours. Now that would mean if we didn't make a deal with our neighbours, we would have to provide 50% more housing in this borough. And we can't realistically do that. We've actually, our level of completions has never been anything like that over a protracted period of time. So the only way we can actually cope is by working with neighbouring authorities in a region, and that's what this is about. I do share some sympathy with what the Liberal Democrat members were saying about an elected mayor. I'm personally not in favour of having an elected mayor, and the main reason for that really is I don't think the Police and Crime Commissioner has worked out as an office. I don't think it has. I don't think it's particularly accountable, and the reason that it isn't is because it's over too wide an area. People don't really identify with Hampshire as a whole area, and there's a ceremonial area maybe, but they identify with their town and their locality within it, and it just doesn't really attach to people in quite the right way. Liberal Democrat amendment talks about having a referendum, or implies having a referendum. It doesn't quite say that. And I'm not sure that that's something which it's seductive. It sounds plausible. It sounds like the right thing to do. But is it really? Because we're in a situation where, frankly, as a local authority, we need a deal. We can't go into this and say everyone else is going to have a combined authority. There'll be combined authorities all around us, but we'll be outside of all of them. And so the reality of it is that it's whatever the government will agree with us, and we do have to negotiate hard, but whatever they will agree, we are going to have to be part of a combined authority. And so what you can't do is you can't have, you can't then say, well, we know we've got to make a deal, but we're going to pretend we've got all these red lines and so forth. And that really is the negotiating strategy of Syriza and Alexander Tisperis. And look how it's worked out for them. I mean, they've gone along to the rest of Europe and they've said, look, we're bankrupt, and unless you give us more money, then we're going to make our situation even worse. And so they've gone and made their situation worse. Europe's called their bluff. They've now got an economic collapse and a banking crisis out of that. And, if we go to the government and we say, well, we're not going to move on this, and if you don't back down, then we're not going to be part of a combined authority, then we won't be part of a combined authority. That's the reality of it. So we have to negotiate and we have to be sensible, but we also have to recognise that we can't go to the government and say, you've got to do this, because it's the government that holds all the power. It's not the council. And so, we have to be sensible about what we ask for, which is why I actually think this Lib Dem talking about having a referendum, frankly, it's a gimmick. It sounds good, it sounds democratic, undoubtedly they're going to write it in a way that it sounds populist in focus leaflets, but you can't deliver on it. We can't deliver on it either, and neither could they. So, I'm not in favour of that. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Councillor Stubbs. A call on Councillor Vernon Jackson.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I think, just for the record, I think the idea of a combined authority potentially is an extremely good idea for Portsmouth and the whole of Hampshire. And we're not objecting to the principle, we're not objecting to any of the discussions. Personally, I think on the geography basis, I think it would be, as I've said to the Leader of the Council, I think potentially, because in Southern Hampshire we have a record of working together and have done for many, many years, I think in the 12 years of push there's never even been a vote, let alone one vote. You see, I leave and things fall to pieces. Oh, well, such it. But for 10 years, we never even had a single vote. And I think potentially a combined authority that represented the Partnership for Urban South Hampshire area, the LEP area, is a better one. But actually, if we're going to get deals out of Whitehall and Westminster, if we're going to be able to get powers passed down, then a Hampshire one is better than nothing. I prefer Southern Hampshire, and I think the Leader of the Council would be in agreement. I think it is helpful to us to be able to say no to an elected mayor, partly because it means that it reassures other councils. I know, having talked to other council leaders, there are a lot of councils around Hampshire who don't like the idea of an elected mayor. And actually putting it in and saying something formally on a piece of paper saying we're not keen actually helps us stick together and means it's more likely that we will get a deal. So I think it helps in the process. I think there is a discussion to be had about how you then consult. And if powers are going to leave Portsmouth and go elsewhere, I think our view is that it would be useful to have consultation with local people. And so far, we really haven't had any consultation with local people. And we need to make sure that that happens. But I hope that that's something that we can look at. I am concerned from Councillor Stubbs saying that we would accept any deal that the government gave us. I'm sure that the Leader of the Council would not agree that, and I wouldn't either. The government may hold lots of cards in their hand, but if there is a shoddy deal that is not good for Portsmouth and is not good for Hampshire, then I hope that we would say no. Now, I'm glad that there's a nod from that, because I think it is very important we don't just do this because of what the government says we do. I think we've got a proud record in this city, under all administrations, of having done really good work in terms of infrastructure. When the government wouldn't provide money for the M275, it was the council who did this motorway spur into Portsmouth City. It wasn't under a Lib Dem administration. When council housing started to be built again in the city, it was a Lib Dem administration, because we were at the front of creating housing for local families in a way that had been denied for many, many years. So I hope that this enables us, all councils, but particularly this city, to be able to work together with other councils, and I hope that our amendment actually strengthens the hand of the Leader of the Council and the other councils negotiating to be able to get a better deal for Hampshire. I think an elected mayor for the whole of Hampshire would be a disaster, a real problem. And to actually be upfront and put something down to say, look, this doesn't work, is a sensible thing. And actually, I think almost every council leader across the whole of Hampshire would agree and endorse that position. So I hope the amendment means that our support for the negotiations is clear, but that we want to make sure that it is the right deal for Portsmouth and for Hampshire. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon Jackson. I'll now call upon the Leader, Councillor Jones, to sum up.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I want to start by congratulating the new Conservative government on following through on their commitment to seriously pursue the devolution agenda. As I mentioned in my opening comments today on this item, it does come following the Scottish referendum, and as I say, that was a commitment shared by all parties to devolve powers down to local communities. I want to explain my position in this, because the Chief Executive, Mr Williams, and I have been working on this since probably since about September last year, and we have sat in hours and hours of meetings, and we have read a lot of documents, hundreds of pages. There is an awful lot of work that has gone on behind the scenes to get this to where it is today before you. And I have to be absolutely honest with this council that this isn't my number one choice that's before you today. My preference would have been a Solent combined authority, and I think that probably many of you have read that in the local media. I would have liked the 3 unitary authorities in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, including the 2 cities of Portsmouth and Southampton, to have worked as what we were calling the Magnificent Seven across what is otherwise known as the PUSH area, the Partnership for Urban South Hampshire, which also is the same boundary crudely that covers the Solent Local Enterprise Partnership. Unfortunately, after months of negotiations and many letters sent and talking to government ministers, I had to be quite realistic and pragmatic, and after having had several meetings with the leader of Hampshire County Council, it was my view that the best opportunity for this city to progress its causes and to further the outcomes, improve the outcomes for people of this city, the best and quickest option for the citizens of Portsmouth was to back a Hampshire-wide combined authority, and that's not something I say easy or lightly. So What is a combined authority and what does it mean? Well, for people that don't understand, who may be watching this on the video link, I want to explain to them it doesn't change this city. We still have our own budget. We still have our own constitution. We still have our own Lord Mayor. We still have our own leader of the council and cabinet and councillors and opposition leaders. We have our own budget, our own executive decision-making powers. That will not change. As Councillor Stubbs has said, and actually so did Councillor John Ferret, this is about increasing the amount of power and control over public spending and outcomes for this city and its residents, not about giving anything away at all. And if it was, I would simply walk away from negotiations and come back and report to this body at full council. So, for the residents of Portsmouth, what could that mean? Well, as Councillor Vernon Jackson has said, when he wanted to do the improvements to the M275, when this council wanted to pursue that, they went to the government and they weren't successful. So this council had to take the risk to take on and build part of that motorway ourselves. Very unusual. Only council in the country to own part of a motorway? Very unusual. Now, we wouldn't have to be negotiating with the autocratic Department for Transport. We'd be able to do it ourselves. And if I was sat on the combined authority as a leader of Portsmouth City, would be voting as one of 15 with colleagues on that money for the M275 rather than negotiating with officials in the DFT. So what comes next? I want to talk about the elected mayor issue because I understand there is a lot of angst and I share it. I want to put down now for the record, I do not like the idea of an elected mayor at all. And it's not protocol to speak on behalf of colleagues who are not present, but what I will report to you, because it's fact and it's in the minutes, is that at the Hampshire and Isle of Wight LGA leaders meeting that we had 3 weeks ago, all councils, every single council in Hampshire was represented, the 11 districts, the 3 unitaries and the county, and we all agreed unanimously we did not want an elected mayor. This is quite a big issue for this area and it absolutely reflects the concerns raised in this chamber today. Now, Manchester has been raised, and actually there are 10 councils, unitary councils, that come together to make up the combined authority in Manchester, one of which, Councillor Ferrer, is Conservative-led, which is Trafford. But anyway, their elected mayor actually doesn't have the powers that you may think. It's not a Boris Johnson elected mayor, and effectively in Hampshire, if we did have to have one, it would probably only be because we wanted to get rid of the Police and Crime Commissioner, which some of you may or may not like. I won't comment on that one, but anyway, we'll second that. I thought you might. But anyway, you know, if you have, if you're elected mayor, you want to get rid of your Police and Crime Commissioner, you do need an elected mayor, but we could make that person a chairman. We could make them powerless other than to chair the meetings, run the police force, and that could literally be it. And we could have a veto over any decision the elected mayor took. But my premise here is to go into the negotiations without wanting one. I have spoken to the Secretary of State about this last week when I was in the local government conference in Harrogate. And what's going to happen next is a negotiating committee is going to be set up with myself, the leader of Hampshire County Council, the leader of the Isle of Wight, a district leader from the north of the county, probably Basingstoke, Keith House as the Liberal Democrat leader of and the only Liberal Democrat leader now, and it's important they're represented at Eastleigh, and also a district leader from the south of the county. That will then come back to this council, Lord Mayor. After we've done these negotiations over the next couple of months with the DCLG, it would have to come back here because it would be a change to our constitution, and that is right and proper. And at that point, if we've not been able to negotiate a deal that I think is right for this city, my recommendation to this council will be that we walk away. But I want to just quickly say to colleagues that this combined authority agenda has been about housing numbers. And if, as Councillor Stubbs has said, we would be the net benefactors of a Hampshire-wide housing strategy. Our head of planning and city development, Claire Upton-Brown, is actually the Southern Hampshire, the push spatial lead anyway. So she's carrying out a substantial piece of work for South Hampshire. This is about getting greater planning controls down here to Portsmouth. This is so that the NPPF, the National Policy Planning Framework, is not as burdensome to us as it is now, meaning sites like the Savoy buildings automatically go through because a planning inspector in Bristol deems that correct. It's about making sure that we get large amounts of capital money for transport infrastructure. It's about meaning we can drive forward the skills agenda. It's about sharing health practices across Hampshire, including the Better Care Fund. It's about the retention of business rates. And we have 5 directors of public health in this county, and we probably could just do with one, which would save almost £700,000 £100,000. And my final point, Lord Mayor, because you're indulging me and I'm very, very grateful, I want to just quickly mention the notice of the amendment to the motion, the amendment to the report today. It's a yes and a no. I'm not prepared to accept it today in its true format because it will weaken my negotiating stance when I'm going on behalf of this council. I need to have the strongest hand I possibly can, but you have my assurance I hate the idea of an elected mayor, and I promise you I will come back to you. And we have agreed at the group leaders meeting at midday today, we're going to have our next meeting in September, and the group leaders will be updated on a monthly basis. So whilst I accept that we need to start the consultation, I think a referendum will cost us around £180,000. A lot of people won't understand what it's about. I think we need to start the consultation right now. I think that's really important. You have my pledge over the elected mayor, and I will do my best for you on that one. And as I say, after negotiation, it will come back to the group leaders, and I think that that really is the right way forward before it comes back to full council. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to go to take the vote on the amendment. All those in favour, please.
Lord Mayor.
All those against.
Lord Mayor, that's lost. You're back to the original Cabinet recommendation.
We'll now go back to the original Cabinet recommendation. All those in favour, please. Are there any against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, members. That concludes the full cabinet matters for today. Items 14 and 15, recommendations from the Governance and Audit and Standards Committee meeting held on the 26th of June 2015. Members, the recommendation of the Governance and Audit and Standards Committee meetings held on the 26th June have previously been circulated. I now propose to call the minutes. If you wish to oppose the item, please indicate clearly. Can I also remind anyone that under Standing Order 27, any item to which no objection is made will be deemed to have been approved. I call minute 43.
Opposed, Lord Mayor?
47. Okay. Can I call on Councillor Bosher to propose his committee's resolution?
Sorry, Lord Mayor, I missed who opposed that one. John. It was John. Yes, I thought it might have been. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm sure that a lot of people have actually sat there and digested this report into the early hours, but effectively it has been through governance and audit, and it was fair to say that there were a lot of questions raised about this particular issue. The effect of the legislation is that the Council must change its constitution at the first ordinary meeting after the May elections, of which this is it. And we have to allow for an independent dismissal panel to be appointed, so that in the event that a statutory officer is to be removed from office, we already have the mechanism actually in place. That's what the idea of this is at this moment in time. We've got no discretion in making the change, but we do have to consider how the changes impact upon our human resources policies. It's something that Councillor Ferret actually raised, but concern has been expressed about the lack of a right of appeal in the new process. And advice from the LGA, the Local Government Association, is that the requirement for full council approval of a dismissal following a decision of an independent panel could be considered an appeal process in itself. Now, for some of the more longer-serving councillors, there's probably a wry smile there, in so much that if an independent panel decided that either the Section 151 officer, the Chief Executive, or the monitoring officer, the three of which are sat at the top table, were to be dismissed, then we would have the fabulous situation that whichever one it was would have to stand here before full council and give a deputation as to why they should save their job. Now, yes, I can see some smiles around the chamber now, but with respect, you've got to ask, is that the correct process that we actually need to go through? We could add a bit in about stocks in the Guildhall Square, perhaps, Lord Mayor, but I don't think it's that. The Employment Committee is due to consider this matter at its next meeting, which I believe is scheduled for September, and it will look at how and if our HR policies need to be changed to ensure that the affected officers do have an appropriate and fair opportunity for an appeal in this matter. What I would say, Lord Mayor, is effectively we are voting on the mechanism behind setting up a panel today and not the processes which are there some ongoing discussions going forward as to the mechanism with regards to the appeals process. So what I'd say to everybody is, and I'll be interested to hear what John has to say, is that we need to approve this today to set the mechanism in place because we are legally required to do so, but we are leaving it up to ongoing discussions and then to be approved through the Employment Committee in September, which is the right place to do this, as to how that mechanism actually proceeds. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Bosher, have you got a seconder from your committee? Thank you. Councillor John Farrett.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The reason I oppose this was to get the clarification as to what is going to happen. I raised this issue at the Governance Audit and Standards meeting because there didn't appear to be let's say, a sufficient or even a legal avenue of appeal as such for those that are affected. And I think it's important, certainly as a council, that we don't leave ourselves liable if we do get in the position, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, of removing the monitoring officer or the chief finance officer. Unlike the council leader, I'm not going to announce redundancies on the floor of the council chamber or proposed headcount reductions. I'm just referring to the Hampshire head of public health that you were seeking to remove. Yeah, mooting it. So we did have there was a public discussion, that was a public meeting. I felt it important that we got a public iteration here as to what we were going to do to look at putting in an appeal in place. It was very concerning at the meeting to be told that the appeal would be to the Employment Tribunal. Certainly my understanding is that you have to have an avenue of appeal before you get to that stage. And whilst, if you look in the Employment Rights Act, it is not explicit in there in terms of the appeal and what it should be, the ACAS statutory code is clear that you should have an appeal, and that appeal should be someone different from the person that's made the decision. So it's important as a council that we don't have us as councillors making a decision and then that person having to appeal to us as councillors. It's important that we have a process that has a division between those two bodies as such. So I look forward to papers and reports coming to future meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Farrett. Call on Councillor Hugh Mason, please.
I find myself very much in agreement with Councillor Farrett on this matter. ACAS makes it absolutely certain and sure that you need a right of appeal against dismissal. The question is, how should this be done? We have heard from Councillor Bosher that the Local Government Association suggests that full council might be the area for appeal, that you might appeal to full council. But this on full council does not have an independent quality about it. It could well be that we find ourselves as judge and jury in our own case and also as the appeal court. We need to have some process put in which is clear, transparent and independent for anybody to appeal a dismissal. This is especially important in the case of senior officers, because they carry with them such level of authority that it is important that any appeal should be quite clearly independent, transparent and acceptable to the whole of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Vernon Jackson, please.
Well, my Lord Mayor, I think if we added the local democracy manager onto the list, there would be nobody at the top table to advise you, because they'd all have left the room. the change in the law that meant that local councils were no longer able to sack their chief executive, their finance officer or their chief legal officer came in under the last Labour government to try to address an issue which was that with a change of administration, some new administrations sacked all their senior officers. And that was a problem around the country, and the change was trying to address that. The exact opposite seems now to have happened, that the way in which the law was based on the Local Government Act meant that almost no councils felt that they could get rid of officers who weren't performing, and they just had to pay them off to go. Now I think the proposal that's come forward is a slightly better one, because it does mean that we get the power back to be able to dismiss senior officers. The current way in which things have worked, up until this change in the law, has meant that if we wanted to get rid of one of those 3 senior officers, the council did not have the power to do that. Those 3 officers were protected, and we had to get an independent person in at vast cost to try to get rid of them, even if they were not doing their duties properly. So this is a step in the right direction, but I think John Ferret's right that we need to look at how we do this. I'm not sure that a hearing of full council is the right way of doing it. I know some councils, when they interview chief executives with all members of the full council. I talked to somebody who was interviewed by an interview panel of 96 people, which is a hugely inefficient way of doing things. So if we could find a way, and I'm sure Simon and his committee will work on this, where we've got a group of people who are able to look at this, and I think potentially using the idea of some of the independent members who currently work with governance and audit, that might be a very good sensible way forward. But it is addressing the real problem that the councils around the country have had, that we are stuck with our senior officers with no ability to get rid of them, however bad they are, if an independent person doesn't agree with us. So I think this is a sensible move from the central government to a bit more localism, so that we have some more decision-making power back here in Portsmouth.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. And I can assure him, if I'm deserted by the last member, I will assume full dictatorial powers. I'll now call on Councillor Bosher to sum up, please. Sorry, Councillor Bosher.
Obviously, your dictatorial powers have to bow to
what
you're told to do, Lord.
Yeah, you're quite right. When you've been married 46 years, you've got no powers. I call upon the leader, Councillor Jones. Thank you.
You say that with such a heavy heart, Lord Mayor. It does make me feel encouraged. Yeah, I mean, obviously, as Councillor Bosher said in his opening address on this one, this will be going on to Employment Committee now for us to work through exactly how the process should be carried out in terms of the dismissal of senior officers. And actually, Councillor Ferret and Councillor Vernon-Jackson have made good points. They both sit on Employment Committee, as do I as Chair of Employment Committee. I think the only group leader who isn't represented on Employment Committee is Councillor Galloway, and I think it would be appropriate to invite him to come to Employment Committee, let him know the dates in advance, make sure you can make them, so that he can come along and make a deputation and be included in how this would work, because he would certainly be involved in any decision being taken if we were ever to want to dismiss a senior officer. I think it's important that everybody in the chamber is represented in the way this is done. I think the right of appeal is essential. It is absolutely right and proper. All other senior, in fact, actually all members of staff in this council have the right of appeal legally under our employment process and, in fact, under British employment law. And it would be barbaric that the senior officers, 3 people highlighted in this change in legislation, were excluded from that. So I think it's absolutely right and proper that the Employment Committee do give due consideration to that. I share Councillor Vernon-Jackson's thoughts and comments on the fact that full council would seem to me to be the absolutely inappropriate place for that to be done. But like I say, not wanting to tie the hand of the Employment Committee, it's something we need to give due consideration to, and we'll be working with the head of HR, legal and performance over this particular item, and it will be coming back, I'm sure, for noting to full council at some point in the future, post-Employment Committee in September.
Thank you. We go again. Councillor Bosher to sum up, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Do I have your permission to sum up? Leader? Oh. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Well, I was sort of having a discussion here about the potential for actually getting rid of the monitoring officer, the chief executive, or the Section 151 officer. And I'm not quite sure what it says when a third of the chamber actually decided to go off for coffee during that debate, to be quite honest, whether that's a vote of confidence in their facilities or in their abilities, or whether they're looking forward to them coming back and giving deputations to full council as to why they should keep their positions. Certainly, I'm one of those that's been in this chamber long enough to remember the very expensive pantomime that surrounded a former monitoring officer and largely the result of the Spinnaker Tower. And I'm sure there are some others around here which I seem to recollect spread over at least 2, possibly even 3 council meetings over a 6-month period, and became very, very painful to say the least, and ultimately extraordinarily expensive. But as I said, personally, my view as chairman, and it was a comment that was echoed by the vice chairman of the committee, was that in an ideal world, because there were too many questions that this report was actually prompting, we would have preferred that this report was actually pulled from this council meeting, was got right and came back to a future council meeting. But as I said, the legislation does not allow us to actually do that. It has to be considered at the first meeting of the full council after the May election. So we are where we are. But as I've made absolutely clear, what we are actually voting on here is the mechanism for setting up the independent dismissal panel, the process of that part of it, and nothing more. What we are actually doing is basically saying to the Employment Committee, there are issues that need to be addressed, and I think it's good that we've got both Councillor Vernon-Jackson and Councillor Ferret for their different expertise that sat on Employment Committee, that they will be the ones that will be considering the process that needs to be considered when we are removing. It's not the personalities as such. We are talking about the fact that it is the monitoring officer, the Section 151 officer, and also the chief executive, which are 3 statutory roles that we have to have. So you can remove the personality, but in theory you've still got to have the role, and that is the issue around. And so what I would like is for council basically to allow this to go forward, as I've actually already outlined, go forward following a consultation period that the monitoring officer is carrying out with the LGA and others, so that when they get it to the Employment Committee in September, they will hopefully have a report that is satisfactory for all concerned. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bosch. I'll ask the members now to go to the vote on this one. All those in favour, please.
Any against, Lord Mayor?
Any against?
The
recommendation from Cabinet is, from the committee, sorry, is carried. And it gives me great pleasure to, this will be the first time, to ask the 3 senior officers if they'd like to return or not. Members, that concludes this item. We now move on to 16, which are notices of motion. We have 7 admissible notices of motions before us today, and understanding Order 32D, each must be formally moved and seconded as published in order to be considered by the Council. I'll be taking them in the order presented on the agenda. This excludes motion G, which cannot be put to the Council today, which I'll explain when we get to that point on the agenda. Is the motion A, proposed by Councillor Vernon-Jackson, seconded by Councillor Lynn Stagg, concerning the Ethical Care Charter? Members, the mover of the motion now has up to 3 minutes on this question, only as to whether the motion should be debated today or stand referred to Cabinet or Scrutiny Management Panel for consideration. Councillor Vernon-Jackson, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. The idea of the Ethical Care Charter is not mine. I'm sorry, it was something that was sent to me by Unison, and I've picked it up. And what the motion asks for is not for the Council to make a decision, not for us to bind anything, but to ask the Cabinet to look at some of the issues within this. I think we all know that adult social care is an enormous issue. We've got more and more people over the age of 80, And we've continuously tried to restrict budgets, and it's becoming more and more difficult. And we're getting to the point where things really are getting to the end of what we can do. It's changed for me because over the last year I've watched my mum receiving home care. And 15-minute visits often aren't 15-minute visits. Because people aren't paid for transport going between different visits, it's often much, much less. And I think there are real risks to residents. If people aren't getting sick pay and then are going to go and look after vulnerable people, then I think, again, there is a real risk. So I hope that we'll be able to debate this and hope the Cabinet will be able to take this away, have a think about it and see what we're able to do to be able to bring these principles into Portsmouth. I think everybody knows that we're getting to the point where social care in the way that we see it has got to the limits of what we can do. And I think we just need to think about how we're going to do this and how we're going to work with health in a better way. And I think actually, if we did some of the principles based in here, from my experience of having seen my mum over the last year, I think we're likely to potentially to be able to save money for the council. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. The council now votes on whether the motion should be dealt with today. Those in favour of debating it now, please.
Lord Mayor.
Those against?
(24), Lord Mayor. So is that going to be referred somewhere? Referred to Cabinet.
Referred to Cabinet.
Is that formally?
Yeah, Lord Mayor, I've got no issue at all with the motion. I think I'm happy to have a look at it and and then give consideration to the implications of imposing it. No issue at all.
Scheduled meetings, Lord Mayor.
Moving on to motion B. Is the motion proposed by Councillor Hastings and seconded by Councillor Lynn Symes?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. At this stage, I get the feeling that I probably don't need to hard sell.
Councillor Hastings, you just had to acknowledge. Then I'm going to.
I do propose it. Yes.
Then I'm going to talk to you. Naughty boy. Members, the mover of the motion now has up to 3 minutes on the question only as to whether the motion should be debated today or stand referred to Cabinet or Scrutiny Management Panel for consideration. Councillor Hastings.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and sorry to shortchange you there on your words. As I was starting to say, I get the feeling that I don't need to hard sell the fact that this will be debated today because this matter of the tower is high profile, contentious in some areas, and I think people will want to debate it. So really, that's all I'm going to say at this stage. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Those in favour of debating it now, please. Any against? Unanimous. Councillor Hastings, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's gone off. This motion is here today in gratitude for the immense achievement for the communications and marketing team of this council for putting together and getting together to fruition this remarkable sponsorship deal with Emirates, which will benefit all Portsmouth residents. I am extremely impressed by the achievements and my thanks go to them. I would also like to extend my appreciation to the leader of this council for her hard work under pressure to keep this deal in place and not lose any of the sponsorship money from the Emirates in these sensitive and delicate negotiations. When the design was unveiled at the top of the Emirates Spinnaker Tower and the realisation dawned on all of us that the red and white was clearly not going to go down well with residents, the whole deal could have fallen apart there and then. But thankfully the leader kept her head, listened to the voices of the city, immediately got back into negotiations with some of the toughest business people in the world. Not only did she negotiate and push for the new colour scheme that would satisfy residents of Portsmouth with a very clever match of the city emblem, the blue of course satisfies the Portsmouth Football Club, and all the time keeping Emirates on side. Indeed, there is a figurehead in the Gunwharf Quays, that was saved from HMS Marlborough in 1925 that is coloured blue, gold and red. I would say this is testimony to the choice of colour in itself. I have to say that I was most impressed with the fact that the changes to the design, nothing was lost in the amount of sponsorship money being paid by the Emirates, and that was a triumph for our communications marketing team, and in particular the leader of this council, Donna Jones. And I'm open it to debate.
Can you confirm, Councillor Symes, you're seconding this? Thank you. I've received 2 amendments which will now be distributed amongst the members. Councillor Mason, yours is the first amendment. Would you like to move that, please?
With your permission, Lord Mayor, I will await the distribution of the amendment so that members can know what I am talking about. My Lord Mayor, I would not wish this amendment to be construed in any way as being a criticism of the work of our officers. The amendment is specifically... I'm amazed that I'm amusing Councillor Symes.
Councillor Mason, can we confirm you have a seconder?
I have a seconder, I believe.
I'm seconding the motion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nothing in this motion is denigrating the work of the officers. They have worked exceedingly hard on this, and one would have wished for a better outcome. We all recognise that in these austere times, sponsorship provides a valuable source of income for hard-pressed councils. But we must also recognise that there is a clear distinction to be drawn between the provision of sponsorship and the methods of advertising which may be associated with that sponsorship. The Spinnaker Tower is undoubtedly one of the most beautiful and iconic constructions of the last 50 years anywhere in the world. We might argue all day as to whether it was sensible to build it in the first place, but surely none of us would disagree that it is a beautiful, a striking and an elegant structure, which perhaps even more now than HMS Victory has become the identifying icon for our great city. It is known and respected worldwide. It has stood there, pristine white, a slender mast with a billowing sail pointing skyward, standing at the entrance of our harbour and our city. And at night, whether in pure white light or with coloured illumination, it stands there at the entrance to our city as a reflection of the ambitions which we have for our city. And this administration has debased it. It has debased it by turning it into an advertising hoarding. They should be ashamed of themselves for such desecration. I am not surprised that the whole matter was not brought before the Council. Such deals are easily concluded behind closed doors. The administration should hang its head in shame. Now, they may come back and say, well, you started the process of looking for a sponsor. Yes, I did. I started that process. But I had certain requirements for a sponsor. and for the advertisement that they would produce. And one of the things about an advertisement is that it should not detract from the Spinnaker Tower. I am afraid that the level of advertisement which we have now being placed on the tower, on its structure rather than on its base, does detract from that tower. I therefore feel that the administration has made a grave mistake, which they will come to realise in time. I would therefore ask members who care for the dignity of our city and the respect in which it is held to support this amendment. Thank you.
Before we go to the debate, there's been another amendment, and that's in the name of Councillor Gerald Vernon Jackson. Would you like me to circulate that now?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. My Lord Mayor, today I'll be speaking in favour of the original motion proposed by Councillor Hastings and voting in favour of it, and for the deal with Emirates. This isn't the view of the majority of my group, but I support this deal and will continue to do so. The decision to look for external sponsorship of the tower and other potential options was started under Lib Dem administration, and the naming rights of the tower was specifically mentioned and supported. I've looked at the Council's procurement policy and the advertising policy, and the advice I've received is that neither of these Council policies has been broken by this deal. There is other advice, but this is the advice I've had. There is an argument that if we had a stronger procurement policy, then we would have had the same standards of accepting money off companies as we do when we give them money. And with that deal, the deal with Emirates might fall. This is because Emirates is different from many companies. It's a 100% owned subsidiary of the United Arab Emirates government, and the human rights record of the UAE is poor. In the UAE, women can be jailed for being raped. But the current proposal does bring in £700,000 a year cash for the City Council, and that's money for 5 years. And in my view, this is a good deal, and we all know that because of the cuts the government has brought in year, the Council will have to find £1 million more cuts, even on top of the cuts we made at the budget. And this additional cash will help that. But I do have real concerns about the deal. And the amendment comes from something that was said earlier today at the Planning Committee. I'm concerned that there are several things that have gone wrong in this. I first heard rumour about this deal just before it was announced. No more. As I understand it, all the discussions were held in private, so the announcement of the deal and the sponsor was a surprise to most people. The deal announced by the Deputy Leader of the Council also talked about the painting of the tower. This was also part of the press launch. We all know there was mayhem. People were really cross and objected to painting the tower red and white. And my thanks that the colour scheme has been changed. But at the Planning Committee today, the Leader of the Council came to give a deputation. And one of the things that the Leader of the Council said in that deputation was the painting of the exterior of the tower was not connected to the Emirates deal. It is not part of this deal at all. Now, that was a surprise to me, And I'm overjoyed that it gives us the option to say, we'll keep the Emirates deal, but we won't paint the tower. We will keep it white. The letters might be a different colour, but we've been told by the Leader of the Council the painting of the exterior of the tower is not part of the Emirates deal. And if that is so, I'm overjoyed because that gives us the option to keep it white, which I think everybody agrees most people would prefer. When the tower was first constructed, it was an issue that really divided this city. Over the last 10 years, we've moved it from being an issue that really divided the city into something that people are enormously proud of, really proud of. And painting it in advertising colours, I think, will have a really serious detrimental effect, and it will mean that people are not so happy to support it. I've heard rumours that the BBC are already discussing removing the image of the tower from the local news because it is becoming an advertising billboard. Now, I think that's bad for the city. If we kept it white, entirely white, then I think that risk would be reduced. So I will continue to support this deal, but the secrecy around it has caused problems. I think if there had been more people having a discussion, we wouldn't have had the problem of the red and white of the colour being announced. I don't know how many members of the Cabinet, before it was announced, when they had their discussions about it, realised the problems of the red and white painting. I don't know how many members of the Cabinet, in their briefing session, were able to say, actually, let's keep the tower entirely white because we don't need to paint it because that's not part of the Emirates deal. But I think a wider consultation with local people would have been helpful. We were told at the Planning Committee earlier today that not one residential property had been sent a letter about the advertising on the outside of the tower. Not one single household by the council. Now, the advice was because there aren't that many residential properties close by. But this, we just voted to put up an 88-foot set of letters, 250 feet in the air above the city of Portsmouth, and that makes it very different. So here in the Lib Dems, we've got a free vote on this issue. I'll support this deal, others won't. But we're the party that opposed slavery, that supported extending the vote, and the party of human rights. So I understand why many Lib Dem members will oppose this deal. I think it's a sign of strength that that freedom of expression is allowed and that view is supported. So my thanks and best wishes to the council officers who've negotiated the deal. I support it, and I support this motion, and I will vote for it. But it could have been handled better, and this I regret. Over 10 years, we've moved the tower from being, in this city, from being something that divided us to something that brought the city together. I'm really worried we're now going to go back, and the tower will become an image of division, not of unity in the city. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ronan Jackson. Can you confirm that there's a seconder for your amendment?
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dowling. We now go to and open the formal debate. Call on Councillor Luke Stubbs, please.
Already, Lord Mayor, I thought I'd be quite some way down. Well, I certainly, won't come. Councillor Mason needn't worry that we're going to come back too much to him having started this process off, because in like so many things we found when we've taken over this council, that it hadn't really got anywhere, that it had been something which had been mumbled about, talked about for years, but nothing had really happened. And so we decided to do something about it and to get a problem solved. And I'm glad that we did, because we're in a time now where we've got to save absolutely massive amounts of money, and we've done a fantastic deal which will offset a fair bit of the cuts that we have to make over coming years. We've also got a deal which will help put this city on the map, and it will do that. And I'll tell you this, Emirates is a very important company, and I'll tell you, in my role in Pred, I have conversations with property developers and so forth about various sites that they're interested in, potentially. And all of them, and I do mean all of them, have heard of Ben Ainsley, because things like that do matter. They resonate with people, and people know about it. And since the Emirates deal has been announced, people have mentioned that as well. It's the sort of thing that will end up, there will be investment in this city as a result of being advertised on Emirates Airlines. We'll never be able to identify what that investment is, but there will be some foreign businessman who thinks about Portsmouth who hadn't previously done it as a result. I think really what Councillor Vernon Jackson is trying to suggest when he's talking about keeping the tower white, it's basically it's Greece all over again. And we just brought this subject up, but that's what it is. It's promising two contradictory things. And look what happened. So in the case of Greece, they promised they could stay in the euro and end austerity, and somehow the stronger party in the argument, which was Germany and the European Commission, would cave in. Whereas Councillor Vernon Jackson says you can take the money for having sponsorship without giving any advertising, without giving any branding value from it, and somehow the company will have to cave in. Well, it didn't work out for Greece, and it wouldn't work out for this council. If you tried doing that sort of thing, you'd get nothing. Now, you would be able to get a small amount of money just for the name, but it wouldn't be on anything like this scale. And if you want an indication of that, I'll refer you to the council budget, because in the council budget for this year, it makes an allowance for sponsorship from the tower. Now, of course, that's only a part year, not the whole year, and it's a necessarily cautious figure. Nonetheless, it's £80,000. That's what's in the budget, £80,000. So this gives you some indication of actually, you know, how really what a great deal this is. It's far more than we ever expected to get. And if you don't want to accept that, if you want to try to sabotage this, then I have to ask you this. I want a list of things you'd like to cut. You know, let's have a list. Not just to pretend, oh, you could find it from efficiencies, an actual list of things to cut. Because every efficiency we're going to take. But there's going to be things where we can't cover all of this for efficiency. There's going to be elements of frontline service reductions that are going to have to happen, some of which we'll be able to stop doing because we've got this money. You don't want to take the money. Please tell us which of those things you want to strike out. Thank you.
Point of order 39B. Councillor, I said I supported the deal. I voted against the Planning Commission on the basis of the amount that could, and as I said in the Planning Committee, I supported quite a lot of the branding on it. So, but the Council Leader was clear, and I wouldn't have put this amendment down, if the Council Leader had not said that the painting of the external part of the tower was not connected with the Emirates deal and entirely separate from it. Otherwise, I would not have put this down.
Standing Order 39B. I'm sorry, I ignored it the first time during Councillor Vernon Jackson's speech because he is misrepresenting what I said this morning at Planning Committee. I was going to cover it in my own comments, but now it's been repeated again. I feel obliged to have to clarify what I said this morning. I did not say that the painting of the tower was not connected to the Emirates deal. I said the painting of the tower was not a material planning consideration this morning. Only the advertising and where the words would go were a material planning consideration, not the painting itself. Obviously, the painting of the tower has happened as a consequence of the deal with Emirates, and he's completely misrepresenting what I said, which was highlighting it was not a material planning consideration. And those colleagues in the chamber who were sat here today when I said this will be able to reiterate that, and I only hope the Planning Committee was recorded this morning, because I would like to ask the Chair of the Planning Committee if he can clarify his understanding of my comment.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Councillor Hunt,
Lord
please.
Mayor, how could that be a clarification of something that the leader has said in the speech today? What she said this morning is not being a speech today. She should have clarified. She should have waited, and that was a separate speech, in all honesty. And I don't see how she.
Councillor Hunt, regardless, I've called you anyway because you wanted to speak. So, if you'd like to start again. Yes.
Lord Mayor, that was garbage from the Leader of the Council. Total garbage. Even the officer's report points out that the blue paint has absolutely nothing to do with the advertisement consent that was given today. Will you stop interrupting people, Leader? The blue paint has absolutely nothing...
Members, please.
The blue paint and the gold paint has nothing to do with the advertisement consent this morning. Everybody knows that now. And it was that all the misrepresentation that we've had over this matter has led to unnecessary, quite frankly, controversy on this particular matter. It has not been handled well. And we heard the leader of the council say earlier on that she was proud of the openness and the transparency through the video behind me, and they can see the best part of me, which is the back of my head. But quite frankly, this process has not been open. It has not been transparent. It appeared first of all on the pages of the news in its splash red colour, probably Probably, I'm guessing at that, but this is what people are saying on the street that I speak to. They did it because they wanted to frighten the life out of everybody with this massive red scheme. And then they suddenly came back with what everybody thought was this nice blue scheme. But again, that was another sleight of hand, because it's a whim and a fancy of the Tory group to do this. They have given themselves, they shake their heads like this, but it's true. They have given themselves permission. No one else has given themselves, they've given themselves permission to go and paint the tower blue and then gold at the top. Now, the only time that the advertisement consent comes in is when the City Council, who, let's face it, has treated themselves very nice over this matter, cut itself a lot of slack, the sort of slack that it wouldn't give other applicants. It's given itself an easy time. The advertisement consent, when it comes in and puts up this massive Emirates sign on the side of the tower, and of course it's in white. So if you had that in white on the side of the tower without the blue, it wouldn't be seen. But they're trying to argue that the blue is not part of the planning. Well, and we know now that's what they're trying to argue, but it doesn't add up, does it? It's all sleight of hand. And that's been the Tories ever since they got in. All sleight of hand. They claim openness and transparency, and they do the exact opposite. I have not been able to get a single bit of information, not one bit of information until Friday last, about this particular application. And we learned only this morning from the City Solicitor, Mr Lawther, that the Millennium Commission grant documents, which they need the permission to put the sponsor onto the tower. They haven't even got that permission as yet, because Mr Lawther writes that the Council is in the process of finalising this consent. Now, we only got that information by continuing to push and push and push and push. Nothing has come out of this Tory administration about this. They've tried to hide it. They've tried to conceal everything that they've done in order to get this through. I have to say that I am opposed. I'm different to the leader of my group, Councillor Gerald Vernon-Jackson. I am hugely opposed to this city, this very proud city, which saw the D-Day push off into Europe to free up all of Europe. And so many men and women went off and died in order that we can enjoy freedoms in this country, so that we can enjoy a liberal lifestyle. Yet we're going to paint we're going to promote the United Arab Emirates up, and the Emirates airline is an extension of the state of Dubai, which is an autocratic monarchist. He decides, the monarch over there decides what happens. If you get pregnant over there, ladies, outside of marriage, you get lashed in the street. And if you're gay in that country, it's the death penalty. And flogging and stoning are are still forms of judicial punishment in that country. And people, even until recently, are regularly sentenced to flogging. It goes on all the time. But if you're gay, you can't go around and you can't do anything, quite frankly. So for these reasons, I am absolutely appalled. I'm sickened to the stomach that the Tory and listen, they got form for it, because in the European Parliament, when the EU condemned the Emirates, and UKIP abstained on this, but Labour and Liberals voted together, all 29 MEPs voted not to condemn the United Arab Emirates. And so this Tory party has got form for this, and it's an absolute shame, a real shame. And I am sickened to the stomach that we are going to put up that country's name on our very proud and everything that the tower stands for. So I am appalled by what they have done, and I think in the long term they too will be held to account.
My Lord Mayor, 39.2. I've had discussion with Donna by notes, and it would appear that the painting of the tower is part of the advertising, the external part of the tower is part of the advertising deal with Emirates, and therefore if we don't paint it, although the different colours, we lose the deal. Therefore, I'm going to withdraw my amendment.
Thank you.
Point of order, Lord Mayor. Councillor Hunt, in his speech, made reference, basically implied that the officers dealing with the planning application hadn't behaved properly, that somehow it was rushed through on a special deal. Well, I think that is outrageous, and I think through you, Lord Mayor, that Councillor Hunt owes those officers in this council an apology.
Thank you, Councillor Stubbs. I'm now going to call on Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And just to echo the point that Councillor Stubbs made, I absolutely am flabbergasted that such detriment has been laid at the door of the planning office. I think they've done an exceptional job in very difficult circumstances. And just to clarify, this morning, in terms of the decision that was being made, we were asked to discuss and debate about the advertising. That was the actual issue in front of the Planning Committee. The paint was not, and again, just to validate what Councillor Jones did say at the committee, it was indeed correct. So, again, that's confirmation from myself, Councillor Jones. I think the thing I just want to pick up on, again, I really echo the sentiment of what Councillor Stubbs has said already about that we are trying to find funding. And I just find it astonishing that the Lib Dems seem to revert to type here. You're opposing and supporting in the Planning Committee, so opposing certain parts but trying to support. Let's not forget this is a party who were part of a government that left us in this position in the first place with the exponential cuts that we are facing, with the austerity that is now in place. And it's Parliament's position to seem to want to stop something and mitigate, trying to find funding to support the city when we are losing money because of decisions made by their party in a government that was running this country up until recently. So I think they should really sort of reflect on that situation. The other thing here is around consistency, Lord Mayor. What I find astonishing is that, we are talking about the issues around Emirates, and, I don't doubt and I understand many of those things that Councillor Hunt has raised, but it is about consistency. We had, under the Lib Dem administration's previous watch, that BAE took over the naval base. Where was the objection then, Lord Mayor? What about Veolia and Israel? Where was the objection then, Lord Mayor? So again, this is just reverting to type. You're trying to abandon a sense of responsibility. You're trying to deflect this and make it, and you're politicking it. I understand the issues, but you can't claim to be against one thing when you've got two other things that have been, left without being mentioned, which you didn't stand up and say about human rights or issues of that type, when you could have done, and you had the chance, and you didn't. So please don't try and pull the wool over the residents of Portsmouth in terms of this. Yes, there is an issue, but it is very, very duplicitous of you to try and say one thing about one company when you haven't about others. I think, frankly, that is a situation that is beyond ridiculous. The issue here is we are facing funding cuts. We need to find money. I think at the end of the day, we may differ on certain issues within our political groups, but I do commend the actual leader and the deputy leader for trying to think and making a move forward for this city instead of trying to oppose and get back to a situation before the Spinnaker Tower was built in terms of opposing for opposing's sake and not trying to move this city forward. I didn't buy it. I don't think the residents of Portsmouth will buy it either. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
29.2, my Lord Mayor. The decision on Veolia was made in 1996 by Hampshire County Council, and therefore not part of this council in any way to make that decision. And the decision for BAE to take over the naval base was not made during the Liberal Democrat period of office. It was made under the Labour period of office. So it'd be helpful if you get your, in the city, get your facts right.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Standing Order 39.2, Lord Mayor. I understand that I've been criticised by Councillor Stubb for saying that the officers railroaded this through. It wasn't the officers. It was the Tory cabinet and the Tory leader. That's who did it. And what's it come to when the blinking Tory party in Portsmouth give the Labour Party a massive round of applause for human rights breaches in the UAE? Where's the world coming to?
No, I think that time, Councillor Hunt, you've gone, that was a speech rather than a question.
Lord Mayor, my point previously made under 39.2 is that, again, and at the Planning Committee this morning, Councillor Hunt implied that somehow the officers recommended approval. They didn't want to, it wasn't the right thing to do, but they recommended it for other reasons. Somehow their decisions and their recommendations were influenced by the Cabinet, and they weren't.
Lord
Thank
Mayor,
you.
I'm sorry,
Councillor Hunt, please,
sorry,
please.
you have to allow me to
Councillor
answer.
Hunt.
Sorry, he's putting words in my
Councillor
mouth
Hunt.
which are not true.
Thank you. I now call on Councillor Denny, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can I just say, can we get this back into a real-world situation? The deal has already been done. We should all now be really pleased that our city is going out onto this international stage. It doesn't almost matter what colour it is. Red was a bit over the top and blue is much more distinguished. I'm only very, very sorry we weren't able to attract a British company that could have properly supported our city on the world stage as opposed to an international company which, at the very least, has rather dubious background.
Thank you, Councillor Denny. Before we go any further, we've got to do something official, and that is because there's a withdrawal of a notice of motion, not a notice of motion, an amendment, we've got to...
That's absolutely right, Lord Mayor. The standing orders say that if an amendment is withdrawn once it's been moved and seconded, the council has to formally vote on that, but no debate on whether it can be withdrawn should be made. So you just need to go straight to the vote to take that off the agenda papers today.
Then members, could we do that? All in favour of taking this off? Any against? No, that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Just have the one amendment from Councillor Mason in front.
We're now moving on to Councillor Purvis, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't think I'm going to get as heated as other members have over this, but I am nonetheless quite passionate about this point. First, before I move on to why I do have issues with this deal, to address some of the kind of straw man false arguments being put up, I'm in no way opposing sponsorship of the Tower. In fact, I've supported it in the past and I still do. I've seen sponsorship deals work very well in other areas of the country. You only have to look at things like the London Eye, which have been under British Airways and Coca-Cola. No repainting, no rebranding required. Similarly, Blackpool Tower, no repainting, no rebranding. This is not an unusual thing, and I think the Council is right to seek sponsorship. Where I do have concerns, like my colleague Councillor Hunt, is with the particular choice taken, and also the procedure which was followed. So, if you take a look at our own Council's sponsorship policy, which I have, it sets out a number of objectives. Three of those. One of those is to ensure best value is obtained. Now, as I understand it, we only had one offer. If I'd employed a company, a professional company, to go out there and solicit bids and they only came back to me with one offer, I'd fire them. That's pretty appalling there. Then to ensure that we adopt a consistent and professional approach towards sponsorship. I think the very way this has been handled, questions about how quickly the planning application was pushed through, and I'm afraid I will say pushed through, when I've had a look, that application was validated a week before there were any papers available to the public. That's atrocious behaviour. The way we've deliberately acted to try and pretend that this is not a procurement exercise, to arbitrarily classify it as something else so that we can avoid following our ethical procurement policy, the whole way we've handled the colour scheme, they all smack of an appalling, unprofessional approach towards this. But finally, and really this is important, our number one objective in our sponsorship policy is to ensure that our position and reputation are adequately protected in sponsorship agreements. I'm sorry, it is simply not in a deal with Emirates. As many people have already covered, it is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Dubai government. Therefore, by painting their name on the side of the tower, we are painting our colours up there and saying, we support them. That is a major move for a council. We can talk about arbitrary other contracts going on in the city, other decisions, other employers. They're not our decisions. This is our decision, and this is us setting out what we stand for as a council. And what we're saying is we support a company that is wholly owned by a regime that persecutes its own people. I'm shocked to see Labour supporting it, I'm afraid. Quite frankly, the International Trade Union Congress is outspoken in criticism of the UAE and all of their trading entities. So to see a Labour group that professes to believe in those same things stood here defending that is atrocious. I cannot support Emirates as a sponsor. I would be very happy to see another sponsor come along. I think Councillor Denny has made a very good point. There are a number of other major employers across the region. I don't believe that we've done everything we can to solicit those. I think that we should reconsider this. I think it paints this city and this council in a bad light. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to call on Councillor Alcombe, but before I do that, some of the councillors are tending to stray away from the amendments. some people are starting to go back to talking about an amendment which has been withdrawn. It's just to give you a cautionary word. Just look at what's in front of you, and that's what we're talking about. So I call on Councillor Alcombe, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's a great pity, really, that the rest of the council didn't actually attend the planning committee this morning, because a lot of these arguments were thoroughly talked through there in a genteel and professional manner. We had views from various members of the committee, which in some cases were opposed to each other in terms of how much sponsorship should or shouldn't be on the tower, how much lettering. And I think at the end of the day, I respect Councillor Vernon Jackson for his decision to support it. He did object to the top two areas of print, and there were various other thoughts from other members of the committee. And I think the thing that came over loud and clear for me, and I support what's been said, the officers were professional. The report was independent. They confirmed that this morning. They weren't pushed to write any particular thing in that report. So, and I think they should be thanked for the work they put in. One of the things that Councillor Vernon Jackson mentioned just now was about the lack of notification to residential properties. The fact is that within the first sort of couple of hundred metres, I guess, there are no residential properties. They're all commercial. But what the officer did say this morning was that they had put up public notices around Gunwharf, along the Hard, in Gosport, to ensure that everybody who was visiting, living there, or had a view of it, would actually have an opportunity to make comment, object, or whatever. And the result of that exercise elicited 35 responses. Of those 35, around 5 or 6 were in favour. The rest were against. And I said, well, as a percentage of the roughly, because some of those objectors came from Chichester, Fareham and other places, so they weren't exactly local. My point was, with the greatest Portsmouth area population of around 500,000, 30 objections is not a lot. Considering the amount of objections and comments that were raised when it was going to be red and white, the response to this application has been extremely small. So I think from that perspective we're reasonably content. I think the other thing that obviously has raised Councillor Hunt's hackles, and we've had the usual histrionics from him, is obviously the issues of human rights in the UAE, which is not a planning matter, neither is it a matter for this chamber. And I do find it, as I've said before, hypocrisy when earlier in today's agenda we had the Lib Dem motion originally put forward by Councillor Lindstag when she was Lord Mayor for friendship links with cities in China. Now, if China hasn't got a bad human rights record, I don't know who has. So I think, you need to be consistent in your criticism of who has and who hasn't broken human rights. If you look at the people around, and I know Lynn Stagg is a keen dog walker, they've just had a festival to eat 10,000 dogs. Now, is that in accordance with your ethical feelings? I don't think so. So I think, Lord Mayor, as I say, I think what has been expounded in this chamber this afternoon is a version of what happened this morning. We have to make the distinction between the colours of the tower and the lettering on the tower. To leave it white and put lettering on it, the BBC still wouldn't show us, and I don't know that I'd be particularly bothered about what the BBC want. I think we've got the best deal we can get. I think the people of the city will like the tower once it's done and finished, and I think it's a great deal for the city, and will bring in not only finance, but it will raise the profile of the city around the world as part of Emirates advertising, bringing in more tourists, more money, and it will be a great success. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Willington, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I'd like to start with a bit of a quote of my book. It's from William Gladstone. He said, "Good ends can rarely be attained in politics without passion, and there is now, the first time for a good many years, a virtuous passion." You've heard part of that passion from Councillor Purvis and Councillor Hunt, and I have that as well. And there is a need for passion in these stated times under this administration because of the kind of bad deals and bad decisions they're making. And this is just one of the worst, actually probably the worst, for so many reasons. Because we look at the very beginning of this whole sorry saga, the red and white. I'm a Tranmere Rovers fan. I'm not a Portsmouth fan. I could tell in 2 seconds that paint job would cause howls of derision in our city because it looked like Southampton colours. For goodness sake, if I could see that in 2 seconds, why couldn't anyone involved in the administration who were involved in that tell as well? So it brought this city into disrepute. It brought this city into ridicule. And of course, they then went on to say, we'll do consultation, we'll go out to see what people thought. But we were told by Councillor Stubbs immediately, when I put out a tweet about that, no, we can't do that, we have to do it in their colours. And then suddenly, it all changed. So why was that? Why couldn't we have gone out straight away and consulted the people of the city? And we would never have had the colour issue. But obviously, the colour issue is on the aside issue, really. Because what we really have is the deal with Emirates. As Councillor Purvis has said, it is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Government of Dubai. Government of Dubai, one of the 7 Emirates, the United Arab Emirates. But Dubai, it is a very federal state there. Dubai has responsibility for administering justice on its own people. And justice there means murder, i.e. execution, but let's not beat around the bush. Execution is state-sponsored murder. Flogging, amputations of hands, stoning, all those kind of things. Discrimination against gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender people. Discrimination against women. Let's just think about that. Oh, and not forgetting the migrant workers. When I recently went to India with my wife back in November, and we flew via one of the airports in the UAE. And the plane we got, the Indian airline we got, going to India from Abu Dhabi, as it was there, they flew, and my wife was one of only about, must be outnumbered by about 100 to 1, because it was all migrant workers. Speaking to a chap next to me from Nepal, he gets to see his family for 28 days a year, because he has to be in Abu Dhabi for the, which is another one, the Emirates, but it's the same for Dubai, for 11 months of the year. They take his passport away. He can't travel outside the country if they don't let him. And the conditions they live in are absolutely squalid. So I'm a member of Amnesty International. So actually, I really do care about these things. It really does matter to me if we are sending the message that our modern icon of this city is supporting a regime that does that to people. It is quite frankly embarrassing. It is embarrassment that we've got to this stage, and it's embarrassment that we are supporting against our own advertising policy, which is another policy where it says we should not be having links through advertisements with organisations that don't stand with our values. Unfortunately, our values, if we accept this and go forward with this, is that we are debasing our values, as Councillor Hugh Mason said earlier. The final thing is about what we have BAR. It's been a big issue in the city. What are we doing by having our Spinnaker Tower just not far away from BAR Racing's, Benghazi Racing's headquarters, being sponsored by the sponsor of Team New Zealand, one of their 2 big rivals, and probably the biggest rival to take on Team Oracle in the 2017 America's Cup. So what was done to go to BAR and say, hang on a minute, you've got lots of big name sponsors. Are either of them interested in going for that? So they have these small companies like Land Rover, KPMG. Do you think they might just have been interested in sponsoring our tower? Well, or were they even asked? Did you go to Benghazi Racing and ask? It's just bad from start to finish. So there is so many reasons why this was a poor deal. It wasn't any fault of the officers. The officers were doing as they were told, but their political direction and their political masters were, quite frankly, awful and have made very, very bad decisions, not just for this, not just for the city, but also for the city's reputation and everything. I'll leave you with one more quote from my Liberal book. It's from John Stuart Mill. And it's the only freedom that deserves a name is that of pursuing our own good in our own way, so long as we do not attempt to deprive others of theirs or impede their efforts to attain it. By us sponsoring and by us going into a deal with the Emirates, we are going against the liberty and freedom of the people of Dubai, and I think that is a shameful situation for us to be in. So I commend the amendment. I hope you will back it, and we can actually show a clean face to the world. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whitt. I'll now call on Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would like to focus on the purpose of this motion and to end the spin and get back to the facts. Thanks need to be paid to Debbie Benham, Charlotte Smith, Louise Wilders, the communications team, Robert Parkin and the people that assisted him on the legal contract. These officers made themselves available to me, not just during their working hours and doing a good job, they went above and beyond the call of duty. I spoke to Charlotte Smith at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon when she had her family there for a barbecue, 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday evening. I spoke to Debbie at all hours of the day. Louise Wilders has emailed me regularly outside of office hours. The officers are incredibly proud of this deal, and I really cannot say how much I'm very, very grateful to them, in particular Debbie, who really went beyond the call of duty, and without her, I'm confident that this deal would not be here before us today. I'm also honoured, Lord Mayor, that we had Sir Tim Clark, the President and Chief Executive of Emirates Airline, here in the city. And for those of you who were up at the Spinnaker Tower with myself and Sir Tim Clark for the official announcement and unveiling of the naming rights sponsorship deal of the Spinnaker Tower, you will have heard what Sir Tim Clark said. Now, this is a man that is the Chief Executive and President of the largest airline in the world, one of the biggest companies in the world. And he spoke about our amazing, beautiful city, Lord Mayor. He said to me, or he said to all of us that were in the room, including media, that he often will be in 3 continents in 1 week. He spoke about the fact that he has homes around the world, but how much he loves this city. He thinks it's one of the best kept secrets, not in the United Kingdom, in the world. Its heritage, its maritime, our beautiful seafront, and everything it has to offer. And we need to not underestimate the strength that the America's Cup World Series has on our city, and that is entirely why we have this amazing, groundbreaking deal in the Emirates sponsorship deal before us here today. I want to pay thanks to Emirates for their pragmatic approach to redesigning the tower, and in particular Claire Eubank, who both Debbie, Charlotte and myself have worked with very closely. After having met Claire when we were in initial talks, which, by the way, only started 5 weeks before the tower deal was unveiled, and the reason it was done at such speed was because Emirates wanted to encapsulate on the 23rd of July 2015, when the first America's Cup World Series Portsmouth starts here in the Solent in our water, sponsored by Louis Vuitton. And people need to realise just what impact this is going to have on the city. I also want to pay thanks to the UKIP and Labour groups for their mature attitudes towards this groundbreaking deal. They haven't played party politics with this. Yet again, both parties have put Portsmouth before politics. But what they have done is shown up our yellow colleagues for just exactly what they really are: shameful. We've heard about embarrassment today, Lord Mayor, in this chamber, and what an embarrassing situation this has been for the city, and what an embarrassing deal this is because of human rights issues. The only embarrassing thing in this city today is their conduct. And I will exclude Councillor Vernon Jackson from this, particularly after he has withdrawn his motion. His amendment, he came up to the top of the Spinnaker Tower, and I will not say verbatim, but the gist of what he said when he spoke to Sir Tim Clark publicly in front of all the media was, This is a fantastic deal for the city. It is brilliant. The association with Emirates is a great one for Portsmouth, and I fully support it. And you know what? I take my hat off to Councillor Vernon Jackson. Not easy when your group are not with you, but actually he can see what's right for the city. I only hope that some of his group will be able to listen to him today. We then move on to the comments from Councillor Hunt. And we've heard today about the association of this city with BAE Systems, who are arms dealers, by the way, who we welcome with open arms to this city in Portsmouth, who employ over 4,000 people in Portsmouth. And Councillor Hunt and other colleagues in the Liberal Democrats have said it's outrageous that the Labour Party are supporting this deal. How could they, with the appalling human rights issues that we've heard about in the UAE? The reason the Labour Party is supporting this, and I don't want to put words in their mouths, is because they support a thriving economy and they support job creation in Portsmouth, which without BAE we wouldn't have. BAE have one of their biggest bases in the world in Qatar, in a UAE country. And yet it's all right for the Liberal Democrats to welcome them, invite BAE representatives to civic events when they were running this city, but they don't want to have any association to the UAE now, Lord Mayor. It's an embarrassment. And somebody's tried to swerve the connection of Veolia and the connection there to Israel, which clearly you would deplore as Liberal Democrats. And let me tell you who signed the Hampshire Veolia contract. None other than the infamous former long-term Liberal Democrat, Councillor Mike Hancock, when he was leader of Hampshire County Council, I give you. So what I would say is this is an amazing deal for Portsmouth. It really is putting us on the map. I've heard it from Emirates that when Sir Tim Clark arrived in Shanghai, people there, the week after this was announced, were asking him, what is the Portsmouth? What is the Spinnaker Tower? Because they wanted to know what was going on. It went all around the world, and that promoted this city. So the Liberal Democrats who are against this deal are against £700,000 cash per year, plus the accumulated interest we're going to get. They're against this city being promoted to on every single flight, inbound and outbound, around the world, to and from the UK. They are against this city being promoted in the VIP lounges in airports around the world. They're against this city being promoted to over 10 million Gold Club flyers of Emirates Airlines. And what I would say to you, Lord Mayor, is that, this was not a procurement deal as has been raised. This was a commercial deal. Therefore, it doesn't come under any ethical procurement stuff. And for the record, Councillor Winnington, actually, thank you for raising it. I did consult with BAR and I did consult with BAE as to with Sir Keith Mills as to whether or not they would have an issue with Emirates sponsoring the tower, bearing in mind they sponsor one of their main opponents in Team New Zealand. They had no issue at all. I spoke to them about other potential sponsorships, and the comment I got back was, grab it with both hands, Donna, it's a cracking deal.
Thank you. Councillor Lindstag, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can I just first clarify a few things that Councillor Elkin said? The friendship agreement with Zhuhai is with the people and the city of Zhuhai, not with China, in the same way as the twinning we have with Haifa is with the people and city of Haifa, not with Israel. I could never support a twinning arrangement with Israel because of what they do to the Arabs. But we've got other twinning agreements as well, which are with the city and the people, not with the country. So that is not being contradictory at all. This particular deal, and the first thing I thought when I heard of it, reminded me of the book, The Picture of Dorian Gray, the man who sold his soul to the devil. I suppose what you're saying is, give us enough money and we'll do whatever you like. And that I can't go along with. I'm a volunteer at Mary Rose Museum on a Monday, and yesterday I went in, and 3 of my colleagues, 2 of whom come from Gosport, 1 from Lyon-Saône, but they come over on the ferry, said, and these are the words, I quote, "What the hell have you done to the tower? It looks cheap and nasty." And that's my sentiment exactly. But the other thing I want to say, that's the appearance of the tower. There are 11 of us in here now, today, on the council, who would not be in this position if we were in the Emirates. And that's right, we are women. Councillor Jones, you would not be leader of the council. You wouldn't even have a say in anything that goes on, because women are treated not just as second-class citizens, but third, fourth, fifth-class citizens. I've been to Dubai and I've seen what happens on a stopover from Thailand and Australia. I couldn't support any country. This is not party political at all. I could not support any country that treats me as a second-class citizen. If you can, that's fine by you, but it's not by me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call on Councillor John Ferret, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just going back to the original motion, which talks about congratulating the comms team, I think the leaders reflected it. It was a very tough job for the comms team over that weekend. I know it was a very tough job for the leader as well in trying to keep that deal afloat. Because let's remember, none of us here want the tower to be painted. In an ideal world, it would stay as it is. In an ideal world, we wouldn't be seeking £5 million in order to try and mitigate the huge cuts we're having in this city, which Councillor Gray referred to, and we've referred to on numerous occasions. And Councillor Stubbs is correct when he says if you're not going to have that money, what services are you going to cut? Because coming down a track, huge cuts to social services again, huge cuts to children's services. We don't know where we're going to find them, but we're facing them. And anything we can do to mitigate that, we should be exploring. And that's why, presumably, the leader of the Liberal Democrat group said it was a fantastic deal, it was a great idea, and he welcomed that on the day. I have to say, given the strength of feeling from the rest of his group, given how pure they are on human rights, given how fundamental they are on any breaches of human rights, I really wonder how it is compatible for him to carry on leading that group. Clearly, they're going to have to go away and have that discussion. But given that he's prepared to back this deal, and I congratulate him on that, and I applaud it. It's not very often that I would do that. It's not very often we're on the same side of an argument. But he has shown maturity here in supporting this deal. And given the strength of feeling, and like I say, the fundamentalist approach that his group have on this deal and on human rights in general, I think it's going to be very difficult for the Liberal Democrat group after this meeting. I made what some people might have thought was a flippant comment on the night that it was revealed that I didn't give a what colour the tower was painted. That was, let's say, a Mendelssohnian comment. I should have said, I don't give a stuff what colour the tower is painted, as long as we get the money that can protect public services. However, that was clearly seized upon by one of the Portsmouth News journalists, one of Mr O'Leary's colleagues. The News, who had run an editorial welcoming the deal in much the same way as the council leader had, and saying that the deal was great for the city, were then encouraging, the deputy editor of that paper was then encouraging people to sign a petition attacking the council leader and attacking the cabinet member for planning for making that deal. So that's the sort of pressure that was being put on the council leader over that weekend and being put on the city, I suppose, in terms of that deal. I wish people could get as animated as that about the cuts to social care and when we're closing care facilities. I wish people could get as animated as that when we're closing children's centres down. It's really unfortunate, and I think we do have to reflect upon that, upon whether we allow our approach and what we do to be determined by petitions and by something that might be promoted by the assistant editor of the News or by the football club, because we have got some fundamental issues in this city around public services which are life and death to people, and we really need to make sure that we're taking a sensible approach. Getting back to the tower itself, there was terrific opposition from the Liberal Democrats when the tower was being built. It's unfortunate that I'm not in a position to congratulate Leo Madden, to pay tribute to Leo Madden for showing some vision in terms of the tower. And clearly people have their own views about how that was handled, but there were people, certainly within the Liberal Democrats and certainly former Councillor Hancock, who didn't want to see that built, who were fighting to stop it from being built. And just as an aside, I sat down at Gunwharf with former Councillor Hancock. I wasn't having a drink with him. We were doing a radio interview, and he pointed to the tower and said, "Look at that. It's fantastic, isn't it? What an icon that is of the city." And I said, "But you opposed it. You did not want that here in our city." So people do have short memories in terms of their approach to the tower and how they felt about it. I think it's ended up as a dog's breakfast, quite frankly, the new colour scheme. We are left with a tower which has a load more paint on it, which is visible from far more points to the city. Personally, I didn't care if it was red You're talking to someone who spent 2 years walking around with a red rosette on, asking people to have red all over their houses. So, you know, it can mean different things to different people. But the original paint job clearly was a lot less imposing. There was a lot less paint than we're currently going to get on it. In terms of human rights issues, yes, ethical foreign policy, we should be doing everything we can to pursue an ethical foreign policy. Labour came into government in 1997, Robin Cook, we were going to pursue an ethical foreign policy. But we soon bumped up against the issues around business. We bumped up against the issues around employment and jobs. And indeed, unions lobbying the Labour government about trying to retain jobs here in this country. It's not as easy as Councillor Purvis says it is. For example, in BAE, there are many thousands of employees there, and if we oppose BAE because they're arming a Saudi regime who have got a very dubious human rights record, then we've got to wave goodbye to many thousands of jobs in this city. We should be doing everything we can to promote human rights in those countries. The friendship agreements that we have, we should be trying to encourage those countries and encourage those peoples to adopt similar standards to human rights. But we don't live in a perfect world.